What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is The Walking Dead Season 8, Episode 2, The Damned. So, some interesting things happen in this episode. A lot of it still really enjoyable. I'm loving just seeing this plan unfold to take out the Saviors. Just everything has been set up perfectly for them to take out different sections. They've all split up into different groups to take out different, outposts and try to, cut off the weapon supply, cut off any help that Negan might be able to get him out of the situation that he's in with all the walkers around. So, yeah, they're all separated doing their own thing, and some of them are more interesting than others. So I guess first I'll start off with the least interesting part, which is the attack on, the weapons making area. Now, there are two sections to this, but there's one section that definitely stands out to me as a little bit more, forced as far as the intensity of it, because it's a great plan and it works perfectly for the first part of the episode. We see a lot of the Alexandrians. Aaron is there, Eric is there, Tobin is there. There's another guy whose name I forget. He's the big black guy with the goatee. I can't remember his name now. And then there's another woman that apparently her name's Francine. I don't know if she's just like an extra that got upgraded to featured, or if maybe she was just important for this episode. I don't know. I didn't know her, but they're sort of leading this little charge on their base. But we come to find out halfway through, very cleverly, this actually isn't a charge. It's a pin them in. And so they all show up. They kill a few people, and they're just there. They're holding them there. They're just shooting. They're pinning them down. And halfway through, one of the women who's sort of leading the saviors in this area realizes, oh, they're not trying to charge us. They're just trying to keep us in here, because she sees the people around them are starting to turn, the dead people. And that's very clever. However, for some reason at the end of this episode, and even partially through, they just start throwing in this random intensity out of nowhere. They got some people coming around from the right side, and so Aaron's like, "Hey, Tobin, go pin them down." And Tobin's like, "All right." And then Eric all of a sudden pops up, "No, I got it," and then runs over there and starts shooting. And all of a sudden, there's some intensity there because, of course, Aaron and Eric are both there together. Aaron is worried about Eric. And I'm just like, is this really that intense? He's just going over there to pin them down. And then all of a sudden, after after the people start turning to walkers and they start attacking their own people inside of there, just out of nowhere, people start dying on the Alexandrian side. It's random. It's like these people are coming around the right side, but they're still pinned down. And all of a sudden, we're in the last 5 minutes of the episode, and all of a sudden, they manage to get a few shots off of some of the people behind the barricades. They're just out of nowhere. They've not had any success up until the last 5 minutes. And so all of a sudden, Francine gets shot, Tobin gets shot in the shoulder, a random other guy gets shot, and then all of a sudden Aaron goes over to Eric after running some guys over with his car, and then finds he's been shot in the stomach. I'm like, really? I get that you have to have some intensity. You can't just have the good guys win out through all of these episodes, because then where's the intensity? There would be no fun to that if they just won everything and there was no fight back from the Saviors at all. However, I think in this episode there's enough of a fight back, and for most of it we think, oh, it's kind of a stalemate right now, and so we realize that there was actually a plan in place. So I don't think you have to force this ending where now Eric is bleeding out and Aaron is there for him. Just do we really have to do this? Do we really have to have this intense moment that you sort of forced upon us? I think the episode overall was intense enough, But I don't know, it's a minor gripe. It's the only problem I do have with this episode. So it is probably one of the least interesting stories, though, so far this season. Next up, we'll talk about the outpost that's being attacked. It turns out that outpost is the one that they attacked back before they officially met Negan. But apparently Negan's people came back in and repopulated and even set up a little moat of walkers. So we see this charge is being led by Morgan, Jesus, and Tara. And then there are a few random people in there that just are kind of important for this episode, I guess, kind of like Francine. So they're leading this attack. They have a little plan in place. Morgan draws some walkers his way, which draws the attention of the lookouts, which then the lady that's randomly important in this episode takes out her bow and arrow and shoots them both and kills them. So they start their attack. They're going through, taking out guys silently until eventually they start kicking in doors and shooting people. Where this kind of gets a little bit strange is nobody seems to be ready for this. They're kicking open doors and shooting people, but then all of a sudden we see Morgan and these two guys who were suddenly important because they had lines. This one guy's like shaking, like kind of nervous, and then the other guy like pats his shoulder like, "You're good." They kick down the door, they shoot the first guy, but then all of a sudden 6 guys with guns pop out from behind him and start shooting. And so they kill the 2 guys and Morgan is down. I'm just like, they were prepared? Like, but nobody else seemed prepared. Why were these specific 6 guys prepared? And then all of a sudden, like, it's a big shootout between everybody. These people starting to hold their own. We see a little scene between Tara and Jesus and then this random guy that they find in a closet. I thought maybe this guy was going to be, somebody that helps them later, but it turns out apparently he was just faking being captured. Random, but it doesn't lead to anything because, he has Jesus and a gun up to Jesus' head, and then all of a sudden he goes to shoot Tara, which of course opens him up perfectly for Jesus to just say, nope, knock the gun out of his hand and then capture him. Where this does get a little bit interesting, though, is that Tara obviously wants to kill every single savior there, but Jesus is like, no, we're going to take him prisoner. And this is where it's kind of becoming that duality that I was talking about in the first episode, where are they going to be more like Negan, where they're just killing everybody, or are they going to be something better, something different, to where you're nicer and that can allow for a more peaceful resolution? Not necessarily nobody dies, but taking prisoners of war, I mean, that's different. That's not something Negan would do. Negan would not take prisoners of war. He would take hostages, possibly, but he wouldn't just capture people and then, put them in prison somewhere and probably end up feeding them. No, he'd just be like, oh, I'm going to use you for later, and then dangle them in front of Rick and be like, hey, I got your people right here. So, yeah, this is a little bit different. We do see Morgan also, when he wakes up, a very interesting story kind of progressing here with him, because we see in the first episode, he's willing to do what it takes to survive. So he has changed in that respect, from last season, where he's kind of on the fence on whether or not he wanted to kill people. He has sort of gotten around to the thought of, we have to fight if we want to survive here. But in this episode, it goes maybe a little bit too far, because as soon as he wakes up, he sees the 2 guys that got shot that he was with, and all of a sudden he just stands up, grabs 2 guns, loads them up, and then he's just walking off. And next scene he's in is just him killing people left and right, like just a machine almost. And it's just so robotic how he just pop, 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 walking, pop, pop. So it was a very badass scene for Morgan, but at the same time, it does lead to that moment where he finally gets outside, sees all of the saviors that Jesus is trying to just capture instead of kill, and his first thought is, I'm going to kill them all. So he goes up to a guy, and of course Jesus stops him. But it is kind of interesting to see Tara and Morgan kind of have the same mindset, because they've both seen a lot of stuff. Whereas Jesus, I mean, he's seen some stuff too, but he's still thinking we need to try to do things a different way than Negan would do it. Negan would just kill all these people, but that's not what we want to do here. So it's kind of an interesting development, the duality of the situation. It's also interesting to see Morgan, I don't know if this was going on in his mind or if this is just a flashback to remind us of what was said earlier, but there is a scene, that scene between him and Rick in the church at Alexandria, where Rick is saying, we need to take the fight to them before they bring it to us. And that scene is playing while he's going around like shooting everybody. So I'll be interested to see if maybe he took those words to heart, or if that was just a scene to say, hey, look how much different Morgan is now. At first he was saying, no, don't fight, but now he's fighting. I don't know. The other thing that's going on in this episode, we see... Is that the last thing? No. Talk about Carol and King Ezekiel next. So after last episode, there's a grenade tossed in and everybody's down. So we see them kind of getting up from the explosion, and walkers are coming out of a store that was nearby. And so they all work together to fight them off. Surprisingly very, very good at doing that, despite the fact that they're kind of discombobulated by the grenade. So yeah, very shocking that Carol just instantly is up and she's just like, bop, right to the head, and Ezekiel's up fighting with his sword. It was a really cool scene, but maybe a little bit too unbelievable that you'd instantly be up after a grenade explosion right next to you. But anyway, but we see that they're trying to track down that guy because apparently he's on his way to an outpost that they're trying to get to, and so they're trying to make sure that he doesn't make it back before he can warn them that they're coming, because if they know that all these people are coming to stop them, then obviously they'll be ready for it. So they're trying to track him down. We see them tracking him in the woods. There's a very nice scene between Ezekiel and Carol where he kind of tells her, yes, we may not win the day, but yet I smile. And he's like, you just fake it till you make it. And that's kind of been sort of the idea around Ezekiel, is that he's not really this high and mighty like king persona, but he has to put that on to give the confidence to the people around him. Because if they see him and they see him very confident and like nothing can go wrong, they'll start to feel that as well. And so it'll inspire them to fight harder, to push further. And I mean, it's a very good concept, and I do like how they handle it here. And so, of course, Carol hears that, and she's just like, okay, I understand. So they do manage to track the guy down. Sheba shows up in the nick of time to take him out, which is, I mean, it's always nice to see a tiger take out one of the bad guys, 'cause that's just so much fun. But we end up finding out, Jerry finds that the guy has a radio on him, and he's already raided back to the outpost, which means they know they're coming. But in spite of that, Ezekiel says, nope, we do not retreat today. So next episode will probably be a bit of a firefight between them and this outpost that they're trying to take over. I'll be very interested to see, what's going to happen there, because, they could possibly win, and most likely they will get some sort of victory out of it, but it's going to be a lot more difficult than what was originally planned. And this is what I'm talking about earlier, which is it can't all go good. I totally understand that things have to go wrong if you're going to make it interesting. If everything just went all according to plan and it didn't seem like there was any sort of hiccup in the plan, then yeah, it's going to be kind of like, well, that was boring. I mean, you think to Fear the Walking Dead, there's that one scene where they're clearing all these walkers out of a hotel, and there's like at least 100 walkers. And so basically they're trying to draw them towards this pier and then have them fall off the pier and jump into the water. Well, all of that went exactly according to plan. No walkers strayed off the path. Nobody was in danger. Everything just went exactly according to plan. I'm just like, well, that was boring. There was no intensity in that scene at all. And so that's kind of how I feel about this. If everything just went off without a hitch, everything went according to plan, or even if it seemed like everything went according to plan, it would just be way too boring. So even if everything is going exactly how Rick is planning it, I'd prefer that they sort of keep us on our toes. Like I said, whenever they were pinning them in at the weapons place, it would be a lot more interesting if maybe nothing went wrong, but for most of the episode it feels like it's a firefight. It feels like they're just sort of in a stalemate. But then finally at the end of the episode we see, oh, it was actually all a part of the plan. That would be a lot more interesting than if it's just, oh, everything's according to plan, and then, oh, something just happened to go wrong out of nowhere. Kind of like what they did with Eric. So yeah, I do like how they're handling this story as compared to the story of the weapons place. So final thing to talk about though is of course Rick and Daryl and what they're doing. It seems like I think they're in the same place as Aaron and Eric's group. I'm not entirely sure, but I feel like that was sort of a distraction so they could sneak in from the other side. So we see them breaking into this building, wherever it is, and they are talking about getting the weapons, so that's why I think it's the same building. But Rick and Daryl have these three guys go somewhere else. Don't know what's going to happen to them, that they're just random guys to be there. But they're trying to find a way to the top of the building, because apparently, according to Dwight, that's where all the weapons are. So they're heading up the building, they're heading up the staircase. We see Daryl is off on his own, and nothing really happens with him in this episode. At the end of it, we just see him like going through, checking these random rooms, and then he comes upon this one room where it looks like they've had a prisoner. There are handcuffs to a pipe, there's some food on the floor. So yeah, I'll be curious to see what that's about. Why was there a prisoner there? Who was it? But for Rick, unfortunately, I was spoiled on this because, well, that's what happens whenever you don't watch a show for, 3 weeks? Yeah, you get spoiled on some things. Well, we see Rick is going through his section of the building, He fights off this one guy, manages to kill him, and then breaks into a room thinking that's where the weapons possibly are. But then we go in there and we see that there's actually a baby in there, and that this is a kid's room. Not sure if it's the guy that Rick just killed outside or not, but yeah, it's kind of another thing to sort of get Rick thinking, am I the monster or am I a good person? He even there's a mirror right above the bed for him to look into and be like, oh, look at me, what have I become? So, yeah, it's a little bit forced as far as, forcing this concept of, do you let your mercy win or do you let your wrath win? But at the same time, it does illustrate the point very well. These people, even if they are horrible people, they still are people too. They are human beings that might possibly have a family. So I'm thinking this will probably lead to Tara wants to kill all these prisoners of war, but because Rick goes through this scene, he's going to be like, you know what, no, we need to let them live because they possibly have families too. So I think this is sort of just forcing that point a little bit more. And then as far as what happens after, well, he's continued to go through the building and then walks in this one room, finds a picture, and a guy shows up next to him, and it's the return of Morales. The guy, when I heard the name, I saw Morales on like Twitter or something, on the Walking Dead Twitter, because I try to skip over it so I don't get spoiled on anything, but I did see Morales, and I'm like, crap, because it's a name that I do sort of remember. He's one of the guys that was originally out of Atlanta. There was a scene, I think, in the first season. Can't remember if it was the end of the first. It was the end of the first because they were about to go to the CDC, I believe, in Atlanta, and there was a family that was like, we're not gonna go. We're gonna go do our own thing, or we're gonna go find our family on somewhere else, something like that. So Morales was one of these people that left. I believe he had a daughter and a wife with him whenever he left. So there was a picture that Rick picked up, and it looked like there was a girl in it. So I'm wondering if maybe his family got killed, maybe even by Negan, or if maybe he just lost them along the way, and he somehow managed to survive and somehow managed to make it to Virginia, and then Negan saw him and saw something in him that made him think, hey, I want you on my team. So yeah, I'll be very curious to see how exactly he's going to play into it. It's very interesting to see a character that we saw so long ago return after all this time, and on top of that, return working for the bad guys, because he says, I called the saviors on his little radio, so it seems like he is helping them. I'm very interested to see what's going to happen now, though, because even though I was spoiled how that on that point, it's still kind of like, yeah, that's very interesting to bring him back. I'm looking forward to seeing how they're going to handle it. So that's about it for me, though. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on this episode? What do you think they're going to do next? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Walking Dead reviews. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.